Hi, everyone. This is Talkback. I'm Sheila Horvitz, and during this crisis time, we're using the new technology live streaming on the Channel 14 Norwich Comcast TV page. This is live streaming now. It will then be posted on the page, on my Facebook page, on YouTube, and also it will be shown many times on the Comcast TV channels 14 and 1070 in the Norwich area viewing, which includes Norwich and all of the surrounding towns if you have Comcast TV. Today, I have two very important guests because during this time when people are living under stay-at-home orders and sometimes tensions erupt in the households, we know that domestic violence issues can crop up and that they are sadly increasing during this time. Let me introduce my guests. Both are people who work at Safe Futures and have important portfolios in the staff there. I have first Nazmie Ojeda. Hi, Nazmie.
Hello.
Good to see you. You are the Community Engagement Coordinator and Education Director at Safe Futures. Is that correct?
I am the Director of Education and Community Engagement, yes.
Yes. And we also have Emmeline Franklin. Hi, Emmeline. Good to have you.
Nice to be
And
here.
your title is Education Coordinator. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. All right. So why don't you first tell us give us an important thumbnail about Safe Futures. Nazmie, why don't you start? The importance of having that agency in Southeastern Connecticut and what it is doing. And then, of course, we'll get to what it's specially doing now.
Absolutely. So Safe Futures is a free and confidential provider. We cover towns in New London, Norwich, and all of Southeastern Connecticut, 21 towns. We have an office in New London on 16 J Street. And although right now things are a little bit different, we are taking calls and walk-ins. We have advocates present and ready to help folks with all of their needs and via the hotline. Our hotline offers confidential services where we talk about things like safety planning, identifying where folks are in their relationships, as well as connecting them to community resources, whether it be housing or emergency shelter. We have a few residential programs right now, an emergency shelter for folks who are actively fleeing domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, or trafficking in Southeastern Connecticut. And we have other emergency residential programs that we support. For example, we have a transitional living program that's on site, and we also have a scattered site program that is out in the community, as well as Katie Blair House and Flora O'Neill, which we acquired after we got the data, which is now part of Safe Futures.
Okay. So you do a lot of programs with community outreach. So describe a couple of the programs that you do before we talk to Emmeline about her role.
Okay, so some of the things that I do out in the community, I work with our local colleges. So I facilitate a lot of workshops at Connecticut College. I work closely with Mitchell as well as Three Rivers, and we really want to make our presence known in the community, and we want folks to know that we are here for them no matter who they are or how they identify. And we also want to educate our community, right? I always like to say that we like to make advocates out of you. We cannot do this work alone. So it's really important for me to connect with our community partners and educate them about what is domestic violence and how they can play a part in helping our community be safer and access our services.
Okay, good. Now let's turn to Emmeline. Emmeline, why don't you add to whatever you'd like about what Nazmie said about Safe Futures and tell us about your role and just what it is that you do.
Absolutely. So as the community coordinator, the education coordinator, my primary role is connecting with public schools all over Southeastern Connecticut. We start our education programs as early as kindergarten and talk to students through 12th grade. So some of our earlier programs, we do some social emotional learning, kind of building all of the foundational aspects of having healthy relationships, even with our peers. So we talk about things with the younger students like how to calm down when you're angry, right? Or how to share, how to be a good friend. We talk about setting boundaries and communicating those boundaries. And then in our high school program, which we call Healthy Relationships, we start to talk to high schoolers who are getting into romantic relationships about how to maintain a healthy relationship as a high schooler. We share the statistic that 1 in 3 teens will experience some form of dating violence. And so with that statistic in mind, we work really hard to educate our high schoolers about unhealthy and healthy behaviors, as well as how to help each other out. We know with a statistic like 1 in 3, even if teens aren't experiencing dating violence themselves, it's likely that they know somebody who is. So that's primarily my role, which has been a little complicated with distance learning, but really excited to be part of these big changes, especially as tensions rise, even for folks at home who are not in abusive relationships.
Okay. So we're going to get into the kind of the definition of what we talk about when we talk about domestic violence, sexual assault, harassment. But before we do that, now that we're in this age of the coronavirus and our stay-at-homes, how are each of you using social media, Zoom, and other methods of communication to keep working? So Emmeline, are you in contact with any of the school personnel and because of the situation now?
Yeah, so we have already started doing some distance learning. Right now it's difficult because a lot of schools, a lot of teachers don't have as much one-on-one time with students as they would in a typical classroom. So we have kind of adapted with a combination of pre-recorded lessons with some guiding questions, and even doing some live lessons with students. So I actually this afternoon have a live lesson with one of our schools. And it's been fun to kind of connect with students and hear what they have to say about, relationships, especially now, at a distance, and how everybody's faring from home.
Well, I did an interview with my 15-year-old granddaughter in Boston, and she made a comment that I thought was very interesting. She said her generation, more than mine, more than the older crowd, are adapting much better because they use these social connection methods all the time. They connect through their Instagram and their Spotify and all of the ways that they use their phones and their pads to connect. So they have, do you think that's true that they have somewhat an easier time of adjusting socially because they're used to these methods already?
I think to a certain extent, we definitely see in southeastern Connecticut an economic divide. So it's true that at some schools, everybody has technology. They all have laptops with cameras, and that makes Zoom really easy, doing Zoom lessons. But, I know that other parts of southeastern Connecticut and the state in general have been having a difficult time getting technology out to students. But I think in general, the transition has been somewhat seamless. I shouldn't say seamless, but I do think that high schoolers are pretty used to using technology, and I think it's been the teachers kind of scrambling to try to figure it out. It's definitely a different dynamic. It's hard to have an open, free-flowing conversation with a group of 20 people over Zoom, but it's not impossible, and it's definitely an exciting challenge.
Okay, so Nazmie, jumping off of that idea, I think Emmeline makes a very good point. There is always this economic and socioeconomic divide. There are families in Eastern Connecticut who don't have the technology, who can't watch this Facebook Live. Maybe they'll be able to see it on Comcast if they have a TV. Mm-hmm. But they're the ones that we have to spend extra effort to reach. And they're the ones who also may not have the resources when they get in trouble, when there's a domestic violence incident, and they don't have someplace to go or know where to go. So my question to you is, how do we reach them? And what is Safe Futures doing now to try and reach them?
So we really rely on our community partners to support us in that way. And while we understand that accessibility is a little bit different these days, we truly see that our community has impacted those efforts greatly. We have partners that are donating food to us, and we've gotten so many food donations that we're able to extend those donations to our community clients. And when I say community client, I mean a person who chooses to call the hotline and have all of their services provided over the phone, or a person who only comes in to the main office, or our counseling office rather, for services with a counselor or advocate. So like places like Philomena's has been amazing. You know, Mike Lucido has donated meals that we've been able to deliver to our residential clients. And then folks who, when we have an overflow of people, we are able to find a place that is safe for them, you know, whether that's at a hotel or motel. Our community has really stepped up and helped us provide beds for those overflow folks. And really word of mouth, you know, once one person figures out that Safe Futures is there to help them and that they can call our hotline, they tell a friend. Our police officers have been amazing. They continue their efforts with the lethality assessment program, where they go in and they assess risk when a domestic violence call is made, and then they immediately connect that person to our services in our hotline. So truly, like, our community has been so helpful. We have a child advocate that's also been putting together packets, educational packets and activities that have been dropped off. And one staff member even thought of myself and my family and dropped some packets off for my children. So I think what we're seeing during these hard times is that although we're all sort of living in the same space, you know, we're having our meetings together, our children are popping up, our pets are coming in, we're also learning how to problem solve together. I think that has been extremely helpful because we can see our humanity and we can identify with each other's needs in a really unique way during this time.
Okay, so now let's get down to the heart of it. Nazmie and then Emmeline, I'd like you to talk about what is the problem that we're looking at? What is domestic violence in the home? Why is it seem to be increasing during periods of time where we are forced to live with our families and without much of a breather for other things in life that sometimes divert that attention? What is it? What is harassment? What is sexual abuse? And how should people listening to us out there be able to recognize it? Nazmie, why don't you start, and then we'll go to Emmeline.
Okay. Well, we understand that domestic violence is about power and control, right? And it's about one partner dominating and manipulating and controlling another, whether it be emotional, psychological, physical, financial, through stalking or harassing. And so one partner is specifically taking over the other and controlling all of their efforts and the things that they may want to do or not do, right? And so during these times, it's extremely difficult because folks are, you know, they're in their homes, they already have to stay, things are tense and difficult. And so really, if anyone feels like they might be in a situation that does not feel safe, or they have questions and they think, you know, I'm having a hard time communicating in my home, whether it be with my partner or with my children, we really just encourage folks to call the hotline and talk to someone. And because talking it through really, really helps. And we can create safety plans with you that feel comfortable for you and for your particular situation. Emmy, if you want to step in and add to what I'm saying. I know from conversations we have with students in the schools and different people like that, I think sometimes we might be in tough situations and we don't know that we are. And so having that conversation with an advocate or counselor can help identify where we are.
Well, 2 points before Emmy. Did you call her Emmy? So that I'll use that name before she steps in. One, we want people to know that the hotline number is not just when you feel that maybe your life is in danger and you're being seriously physically assaulted or abused. You can call it for some counseling, right? Just if you feel, hey, this doesn't feel right. Something's not right about the way my spouse is treating me, the way my kids are, the way my husband is treating my elderly mother or something like that. Because elder abuse is also an issue that's going on during this time, right? That's number. Yeah, that's number.
You make a really good point, Sheila. I think that while we can define domestic violence, something that happens between intimate partners, or in a home, it looks different for everyone. And so the best thing you just said is that even if you feel like you need someone to talk to about anything, whether it be good or bad, or I just want somebody to listen to me to work things through this thought process that I'm in, or I need somebody to feel like I'm validated or supported. We absolutely have advocates on who are reachable 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Now, here's the other question, another question before we get to more of the definitions. That hotline is available 24/7, and usually when someone calls it, they oftentimes want to be in a confidential area. They can't have their spouse or their adult son or the grown-up parent or whoever is involved with them in the problem. They can't have that being overheard. So what happens now? Do they take a phone and go outside? How do they call you when we're stuck in a house, in an area with the people that are harming us? That's an issue, isn't it?
Absolutely. It is an issue. I believe our clients and the folks who need us, I have found people to be very creative and resilient. And while we are mandated to stay home and have these really particular constraints, I'd like to say that our victim survivors experience this on a daily basis. And so it's a matter of figuring out whether it's a bath, going into the restroom, taking a walk outside. That's what I mean about creating that unique safety plan that feels comfortable to the individual to meet their needs. It could be, I'm going to phone a friend, and that friend happens to be our hotline. And so the conversation is led in a way that feels more private and confidential. And so our advocates are very good at picking up on those cues and creating a safety plan along those lines.
Okay. So Emmy, let me start with you. And let's put ourselves in the shoes of a kid, maybe a teenager, some of the kids that you work with in the schools. What are the signs that the child might feel, or that you as an adult would want to look for to say, there's a problem there? What are the signs of abuse of a child or a teenager?
Absolutely. So, a lot of the time what we see in children who maybe are not even being abused themselves, but we know from a lot of research that children who are exposed to domestic violence often have trauma that they carry with them through their lives. So, myself, I work with all students, whether they're in, safe homes with parents who love them, or are in homes where they're experiencing domestic violence or witnessing domestic violence. So, as an educator and as somebody who is trained in trauma-informed education, we look at students and, especially sometimes we see, either behaviors of acting out, attention-seeking behaviors, withdrawing behaviors. It's important to recognize that children who are experiencing trauma, whether it be, they're abused or they're in the foster care system, or, GCF is involved at home, those students are having a really difficult time paying attention in school because they have all of that they're carrying with them. Right. So it can be difficult to then focus on math when you're just trying to keep your little brother safe at home. So, recognizing that, I think as an adult in a classroom, it's just really important to be patient with students, which is not always easy. Some of my middle school programs are the hardest because they've got so much energy and they're not getting recess, and they just want to chat. And but I would say at the same time, those are some of the most important lessons that we can, give to those students. So the other thing I wanted to mention about the hotline, kind of on a different note, is that, a lot of people aren't ready to make that jump and call the hotline. So The other thing that our advocates provide is, if people do call the hotline, to ask how they can help their friends. And we see this with our students as well. Part of our program is talking about how to talk to your friends, whether they're in an abusive or unhealthy relationship, or whether they are being the abuser. We can only, as an agency or as individuals, be in so many places at once. And so, what Nazmie said about creating advocates everywhere we go, with our students, we do talk to them about how to help their friends. So same thing goes with the hotline. If you have a friend and you've been, trying to get them to call the hotline and get in touch with Safe Futures, not everybody is there. So you can call our hotline and talk to our advocates about how to support those people, whether it's a friend or a family member who's in an abusive relationship. And we extend the same thing to our high school students. We get a lot of questions about, my friend started dating this guy and I think he's a jerk, and now she doesn't talk to me anymore. It's those little behaviors that have almost become normalized, but that are really at the core of those unhealthy and abusive relationships.
Okay, so you bring up I have two interesting comments to answer what you were saying. One, sometimes people call and say that it's for a friend, but it's really for themselves. Do you find that? I'm not ready myself. I'm kind of embarrassed, but you know what? I want to learn about it. So I'll call the hotline and I'll say, I want to help a friend. And my friend is doing this and they're really getting help for themselves. And the second point that I wanted to make was, you made it, but I want to make it stronger, that you don't have to be physically abused directly yourself as a child to have the terrible trauma throughout your life if you don't take care of it. Children who witness domestic violence in their homes, watch their parents or step parents or mother's boyfriend or mother's girlfriend, they observe, they watch. That can be as traumatic as themselves being the victims. Okay, so do you want to address that, Nazmie, and go further and tell us what are the signs of domestic violence that we should look at in an adult? What are the signs?
Well, I mean, like I said before, it's about power and control, right? And so we often experience folks who will call the hotline or come in person, and they'll just start casually talking about some of their interactions with their partners and say things like, I find myself having to explain everything that I'm doing or every place that I'm going, or I find that we have really good moments and then something bad happens, right? So there's that cycle of violence where there is an incident and then that incident is followed by that apology or that honeymoon phase, and that could last, as long as a few days, a few weeks, a month, and then there's an escalation and we're back in that cycle, right? And it continues, and folks find themselves trapped because they think, wait a minute, am I the problem? What did I do wrong? And so oftentimes it's a matter of manipulating, and so the person doing these things and turning the situation, right, using that power and control, turns it on the other, and so folks are feeling like they can't say that they're being abused. And also it's incredibly hard, right? That's an incredibly hard truth to say, that the person I love the most, the person who I'm sharing my life with, or the person who I share, my children with, my family, my home, is also a person who abuses me or causes me hurt or harm. And so those conversations are really hard. And a big part of what we do at Safe Futures is allowing folks to come as they are, right? And really truly, like Emmy brought up, it's important for us, whether you're calling and saying I'm asking for a friend, or if you're a parent and you're saying I'm worried about my son or my daughter, and you're really looking for information for yourself, that's okay. We're not looking for anyone to self-identify in a particular way. We're not asking anybody to make a decision about their relationship. We're not telling people that they need to leave or that they need to stay. It's really, really important that we understand that what makes a person safest is them making decisions for themselves. And so that's how we offer support, and that's how we create a safety plan, by allowing people to have autonomy in their safety plans and in what is best for them and their families.
Okay, so let's get into more deeply some of the aspects of that cycle of violence. It's an overpowering, as you said, it's a matter of power and control. Even in sexual assault, it's a matter of power and control more than the sex, right? So tell us, there's economic abuse, right? Not letting your spouse know anything about the finances and controlling every penny they spend. Not allowing, then there's psychological abuse. Talk about the kind of abuse, the psychological abuse that tears you down as an individual and harms your self-esteem, and you feel that you only see yourself through the eyes of your abuser. It may not be at that moment physical abuse, actually hitting or physically assaulting, but there's a psychological abuse that tears you down. And then the other kinds of abuse. Talk about that a little bit more, Nazmie and Emmeline, so people kind of get a feel for the things that may be happening in their home that they might say, oh, well, he doesn't hit me or she doesn't hit me, so I'm not abused. Why is that an incorrect statement?
Well, I mean, just imagine yourself, right? I can make myself sort of the example, right? I meet someone that I'm interested in dating, and I express to this person that, you know, I work in the community and I have lots of jobs that take me outside of my home. I have long meetings at night. And at first, this person is very excited for me and for my success, and it's not a problem. Right. And so I think to myself, oh, this is great. I'm really interested in this person. They're supportive. They understand that my schedule is busy. And then as time passes, I hear things like, in my relationships, it starts to turn in, you know, you only care about your job. And so maybe I feel bad, and I think, okay, maybe I do need to make a little bit more time for my partner. And so I start maybe declining some of those meetings or some of those late nights. And then maybe my partner says to me, you know what, I don't understand why you think you're such a big deal. You know, you're not even very good at your job. I heard you live the other day and I didn't agree with half the things you say. So you know what I mean? Over time, this cycle starts to develop, and there's a breaking down of a person, right? And so the things that they use to build you up, like anyone would in a relationship where you feel appreciated and validated, are the things that get turned and get used to manipulate, right? And so how good does a person feel over time if they're thinking that they're not a good enough partner, that they're not caring and compassionate? And so a lot of the ways that we describe it to our students, right? So it's sort of a perversion of something good, right? Because we all want attention. We all want our partners to dote on us and to do nice things for us and things like that. But where is the line, right? And so really what we tell our students and our clients is that relationships are about balance, right? Not all relationships are going to be perfect all the time, and conflict is healthy, and you know, arguments are going to happen, but accountability is important, and communication is important, and conversation is important, and your partner should never make you feel like you have to choose between things that you love, like a job, or things that you're good at, and them. Right. And so those are some of the little things that we ask folks to think about and to look for, you know, those red flag moments that you feel could turn into something else.
Yes, the abuser will try to isolate you, right? You won't be able to visit with your family, your parents.
Right. And so little by right. We have this great activity with our students. We call it the life grid. Emmy, if you want to talk about it, right? And so we put ourselves at the center of this grid, and everything that composes our lives is all around us, right? For some of us, that means school. It could be our church family, our children. It could be our hobbies, you know, book club, knitting, crocheting, going to the gym. And then we have our romance, right? And so that's also a square or a box in our life. And in a healthy relationship, we're able to maintain all of our boxes, right? We're able to have balance between our family life, our home life, our work life. And then unfortunately, in a relationship that turns into not so good, we notice that that love box starts to grow so big that it takes over all of those other areas in your life, and you find yourself isolated. You find yourself not talking to family and friends, and maybe sometimes naturally, right, folks get hurt and they think, you know what, I've told Nazmie a million times that I didn't think that relationship was good for her. She's not listening to me, so I think I'm going to give her a break for a little bit. And we find ourselves alone, right? So again, it's about creating that balance, right? And we want to make sure that we have space in our lives for all of our boxes or for all of our things, and thinking about things like that.
That's a good way to describe it. So, Emmeline, let's go back to continuing this. So, in that cycle where the other boxes are getting smaller and smaller, and you're in the box with your potential abuser, and now comes the first beginning of violence. How does that cycle operate then? And what do you say to yourself when that happens to you? And, it's different. What happens?
Yeah, absolutely. So we use this lesson as a demonstration of either isolation in an abusive relationship or even obsession in what people would call like an unhealthy relationship. So really what happens and what we see is that, as more and more of these, boxes become filled with our relationship, right? The pieces of our lives, the pieces of what makes us as individuals start to fall by the wayside. So as Nazmie said, it could be that you're not talking to your friends anymore, right? They stopped inviting you to hang out because you always bring your boyfriend along, or whatever it might be. You got kicked off the team because you were skipping practice to hang out with your partner. And what we find is that when people have kind of replaced all of these aspects of their lives with their relationship, it's like putting all their eggs in one basket, right? So if something were to happen to that basket, right, whether that person becomes abusive, either physically, emotionally, sexually, or even if that person just decides to leave, right? And we see that in sometimes those high school relationships, right? If that person decides to go to college, or if their family moves away, or if they're just not feeling it anymore, right? What happens is that you put all your eggs in this basket. And so when that person leaves, people find that they have absolutely nothing, right? And it could be in terms of an adult relationship, right? That's using that isolation so that abuse victims and survivors feel that they cannot leave because they have nothing else left over, right? So it's a tool, this isolation, it's a tool to maintain power in adult relationships, especially because, a lot of the time victims and survivors feel that they have nothing left. So even if they do try to leave, they end up getting back into that relationship. And that's why, the statistic is that on average, it takes somebody 7 tries to leave their abuser. And it's because of this system of isolation and a way of maintaining that control. And in younger relationships, when we see these obsessive relationships, that's where you get into things where people feel like they would die without the other person, or the high school relationships are so raw, that first love, and it can be overwhelming, especially for people who have never had to practice maintaining boundaries before. So those relationships sometimes can become overwhelming, and that's where you see young people, we see cases of obsession escalating to murder suicides. And it's a range, but we use that as a teaching tool to encourage students to maintain their boxes, so to speak, maintain and set boundaries in their relationship to try to maintain some balance.
Okay. So we know the statistics are that about 1 in 3, 1 in 4 women, and also maybe 1 in 5 men during their lifetimes will be involved in harassment, abuse, and violence. And I think 3 or 4, I know women are murdered, killed every day in a domestic violence situation. So this is a very serious problem. And we also know that probably millions of kids, maybe 5-10 million of our children, have been either witnesses to serious domestic violence and abuse or are themselves victims. So we need safe futures. We need you for education. But I want to ask, starting with Nazmie now, in this period of time that we're living in, what makes it even more difficult? And then we want to talk about putting yourself in the shoes of someone who's at home, who, as Emmy said, has now had the 5th or 6th time of violence. The cycle is getting worse. What are we going to do now in this time? You start, Nazmie.
Okay, well, again, I just want to reiterate that we're here for you, that we're here to listen, that we are not here to tell you what you need to do, whether you need to leave, stay. We really just want to have a conversation about what's best for you, about your safety, for yourself and for your family. And honestly, I would love to say that I have a very clear answer as to what that looks like for an individual, right? I would love to say that the answer is to pick up the phone, call the hotline, and do it from your pantry or do it outside of your home. But honestly, safety planning is unique to the individual and to the circumstance that they're in, right? So I would really just encourage folks that feel like they want to have a conversation with us or think they need to reach out on our hotline to think of ways that they can connect with, again, like whether it's a family friend that they're saying that they're on the phone with, or, oh, I'm going to call the doctor and check in. Or I need to connect with my son or daughter's teacher. I think that there are different ways to say that you can get on the phone. We also have the really great thing about our hotline is that it's 24 hours a day, right? So if you find that your partner is napping, from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe that's a good time. If your family isn't settled until very late, we all, I've heard different folks saying that their sleeping schedules are all thrown off. So maybe it's 1 o'clock in the morning that phone call can be made. We're there for you. We're here. We will be on the other end of that phone call, and it's going to be a live person, right? And should anyone feel in that moment that they need to immediately leave, we can also safety plan around that, whether it's creating a code word, whether it's saying, I live at 15 Marshall Avenue, I'm making that up. Could you have someone here? Again, our advocates are going to lead the conversation based on the need of the individual on that other end. And that's going to look different for everyone, depending on, what's going on in their life at the time and at this very unique time. But I will say that there isn't anything that we can't figure out together with the support of our advocates, our counselors, and our community partners, like I said, like police officers and different folks in the community that we work really closely with to make sure that people are safe. If we need to call you a cab, if we need to meet you at the hospital, if we need to meet you at a police station, we've done all types of things to ensure that people are safe and connected to another person who can get them to where they need to be.
Okay. So now you've seen, I assume, an increase in the number of cases, as we've seen all around the country and the world. The World Health Organization had an article in the paper a couple of weeks ago saying there has been a huge increase in domestic violence incidents as a result of the virus and the stay-at-home thing. So you're working somewhat overtime, and we're working in a time where people are wearing face masks and have to protect themselves from the virus. So give us an example of someone who has if this is an emergency, there's been a serious physical abuse, and we need to get this family into a shelter. How does that process move forward today?
It's very much the same as it would during any other time. A person calls the hotline, or if it's through a police officer in the home and they get connected to an advocate, we're immediately working on that safety plan and that connection. So it could be something like cabbing them to, well, right now lots of places are closed, right? So that's a bit complicated, but we still have our main office where we are seeing people, with face masks, and we have plexiglass doors, so that way folks are still healthy and safe, but we can see people in our office. So if we need to have someone wait there, we can. We've helped folks with tickets on a train, with a cab to another city where they might have another family member or friend where they're safe. So I think the point is that if you find yourself in a situation that feels complex and unsafe to you, give us a call, because two heads are better than one.
Right. And so, Emmy, are the shelters that are used by Safe Futures to shelter people who are in emergency situations, are those filled now in our area? And are all the precautions being taken there because of the virus? We don't want people to feel that it's not safe if they have to go to a shelter, that the proper precautions are being taken during this time. Can you speak to that?
Yes, I can speak a little bit to that. I do know that right now our emergency shelter is being staffed by our advocates. And I believe, Naz, you can maybe check me on this, but I believe that we have a floor dedicated to anybody who is tested positive, so that we can isolate certain clients and help keep them safe. And, we've been practicing the same sort of precautions that everybody has, using masks and gloves and disinfecting everything. It's kind of making the best out of this current situation. But absolutely, we are following, as COVID procedures, trying to make sure that our clients are safe and healthy.
Okay, so in this time, if we keep reiterating, don't be afraid to call the hotline if you feel something isn't right, whether you're a kid, a teenager, an adult, and be confident that Safe Futures has taken proper measures to keep everything safe during this time. That's very, very important. Now, what about issues of restraining orders, or when you get to the serious cases where there's been significant physical abuse and the hotline is called and the family is taken to a shelter and that's their safety plan? And now tell us about the role of the courts, or how you go about getting an order, perhaps that the abuser be ordered to leave the home or to do something, and how is that accomplished during this time?
So for that particular need, our advocates are still in court. They are still in the office, and we also have advocates who are completely prepped and ready to assist folks online and over the phone, if it's filling out those orders or they have questions about those orders or those cases. I really think if people have specific questions and specific needs for that, calling our hotline and indicating that they might need support with, if it's a temporary restraining order, a civil order that's related to a domestic violence case, we have specific people who can answer those questions and can navigate the court system. I really don't want to misrepresent or misanswer. So again, I think the best thing to do is to call us so that we can directly connect you to somebody working in the courthouse that represents Safe Futures and knows how to navigate those resources.
So it's important to note that Safe Futures has all of the community resources, including the courts and attorneys, mental health professionals, all of that information in their database, so that when you call them, you will be introduced to all of the other agencies and people that are going to help you, right? That's a good, it's the best starting point, because they can set you on the road to getting all of the aspects of your problem taken care of, right?
Absolutely. So I want folks to understand that if they visit our website, or if they have prior knowledge of our agency and what we offer, like our counseling support, our advocacy services, and our court support services, that all of those things are still very much intact. How you get to them might be a little bit different, right? We might need to do a little bit more over the phone and more electronically, but we're going to work with you, and we're going to try to get you the same resources that you would if this were, say 3 months ago. So it's really important. I'm really proud that Safe Futures hasn't lost the capacity to provide our services. I think, like everyone else in our community, we've just gotten creative with how we do the work, but the work is certainly still available to those who need it.
Okay.
And the
Emmeline,
resources.
yeah. So Emmeline, why don't you kind of start us wrapping up the most important information that you can impart to families, especially to children, and where we can go either to make the call or to get the best education. We need to learn more about what domestic violence is and how we know that we are affected by it. We know that everybody is, but as you were both saying so well, so many people don't recognize the signs and the symptoms. They know something's wrong, but they can't put their finger on it, and they shouldn't have to wait until there's a serious explosion of serious physical violence to kind of be woken up to it in some ways. So, Emmeline, give us the information that we can use to go forward, please.
Absolutely. So in the same way that our direct client services are flexible and available, our educational services are as well. So, I've been working with schools that we have previously been to, but our education department is relatively flexible. So if you feel like you are in need of more information, or if you're a teacher and you'd like to bring us to your school, we are still offering all of our educational services. We are happy to answer questions, all of our advocates as well. If you are curious, you can call the hotline. But if you are looking to bring professional development to your school, or if you're looking to have a lesson on healthy relationships, or you need support in doing social emotional learning, you can email us or give us a call. Even if you call the hotline, somebody can put you in contact with me. And we're really here to support the community in any way that we can. With my students, I ask them, how many of you are feeling tension at home, even if, you're in a healthy, happy home? And all of them are raising their hands. I think even those of us who are isolated with people who we love and usually enjoy spending time with, of course, tension is rising. So, in any way that we can be there to support people, help them calm down, or if you're a parent and you're looking for how to support your kids, reach out to us. We are available, and we will do the best to accommodate your needs.
Thank you. And so you've given we have the hotline number that's been on the screen, 860-701-6001, 860-701-6001. And also, you've told us to go to the website, www.safefuturesct.org, and get plenty of information. They will also have the email addresses of people like Emmeline and Nazmie, and you can contact them that way. Try to make use of all those resources and get as much education and information as you can. All right, Nazmie, why don't you give us some of your final thoughts about what we need to do in today's world to keep our families safe and free from domestic violence?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Sheila, thank you so much for having us on your show and for talking to us at Safe Futures. Again, we appreciate our community partners, and we appreciate the folks that understand and recognize that we cannot do this work alone. I would like to say to anyone watching this or listening to this that feel like they might need help, or like they might be in a tough situation, is that we're here for you. We believe you. We care about you, and it doesn't matter if you choose to identify and give us your name or your information. It doesn't matter if you're ready to make a change in your life, or if you really just want to have a conversation. We are here for you, and we want to take the time to help you figure out what it is that you need. So please call our hotline, send us an email, check us out on Facebook, whatever form of social media or contact that you might feel comfortable with. Absolutely reach out to us. And I truly believe that during difficult times, we are the answer. Love is the answer. Hope is the answer. And as humans, we are the antidote for each other, right? And so a person seeing you, caring you for you, and listening to you makes a world of difference. And I truly believe in the work that we do at Safe Futures, and I believe in the people on the other end of that hotline. I used to be one of those people. And I know that we take the time to listen and to create safety plans that are helpful and beneficial to every single family and individual that we support and that we help. So please, if for any reason you want to reach out, give us a call. If you want to say hi, give us a call. If you need help, give us a call. We're here for you.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank both of you so much. We appreciate everything that you do, that Safe Futures does in our community to work on this problem of domestic violence, and especially at a time like this when tensions are increasing in many households. So thank you so much. I hope people take to heart everything you've said, and that hotline number, again, 860, is it 701? 6001, 860-701-6001. We can't say it enough. People should make use of all of the wonderful services that you have to offer. So thank you so much, and good night, everyone. We'll see you next time with our special series during this time. We can watch this on Comcast Channel 14 and 1070, and you can see it. If you missed the live stream, it will be on the Facebook page of Channel 14 Norwich. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you.
Thank you.